Okay, in this video I'm going to do some benchmarks on the new Apple iPad, or the third generation iPad, or as I will be calling it, the Apple iPad 3. Now, I have a whole host of videos posted on the Apple iPad 3, and if you're interested in any of them, click on the link at the end of this video. Also at the end of this video, I'll have a link of the benchmarks on the Apple iPad 2, so you can see how that device fared on the same benchmarks that I'm going to do in this video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this folder here that I have already set up, and it's my benchmark folder. And the first one we're going to do is 3D Bench. Now this is actually an iPhone app. Now this benchmark is actually part of a game called Defend London, and it's basically telling me here that I could see it if I wanted to. But I don't want to see it, I just want to go straight to the benchmark, which is what it's doing right now. And I'm getting about 44 frames per second. Okay, here are my results. Let me actually mute this. The time it took to do the benchmark is 12.41 seconds. The average frames per second were 40.19 frames per second. Now the Apple iPad 2 scored 59.96 frames per second in 8.32 seconds. And the reason for the difference in the benchmark is that the Apple iPad 2 is running at a much lower resolution. The screen is 1/4 the resolution of the Apple iPad 3. So it takes a lot more processing power to actually put graphics out to this Retina display on the Apple iPad 3. So let's move on to the next benchmark, and that benchmark is Gensystek Lite. And this is Gensystek Benchmark Lite. You can purchase the full version if you'd like. The Lite version gives you access to test number 1. The full version gives you all 3 tests. And I definitely urge you, if you're interested, to purchase this app because it'll give you full access to all the tests. But in this video, we're just going to do test number 1. And it says, please, before starting the tests, close all open applications. So let's do that. Okay, I closed out all of my apps, and I'm going to start the test. Test number 1, floating point calculations, arithmetic logic unit. And it's processing. Test number 1 completed, time 2.36 seconds. Test number 2, pi calculations, calculations of pi approach. Test number 2 completed, 3.22 seconds. Test number 3, MD5 calc, calculations MD5 hash. Test number 3 completed in 2.38 seconds. Test number 4, save screenshots to disk. Test number 4 completed in 6.58 seconds. Test number 5, speed read write RAM memory. Test number 5 completed in 1.23 seconds. Test number 6, speed read write flash disk. Test number 6 completed in 2.19 seconds. Test number 7 is Quartz 2D, linear graphics with Quartz 2D. Test number 7 completed in 2.57 seconds. Test number 8, resize image, resizing images. Test number 8 completed in 7.66 seconds. Test number 9, 3D rotations of images. Test 9 completed in 5.25 seconds. Test number 10, 3D graphics performance with OpenGL-ES. And you get some cool graphics here. And it looks like a solid 60 frames per second up here. Test 10 completed, average frames per second 60. Okay, here's the performance report. It shows that I have an Apple iPad 3 with 1 GB of RAM. The CPU is an ARM Cortex A9 MP Core dual core Apple A5X chip at 1 GHz per core. And of course, this is a dual core CPU. The GPU is a PowerVR SGX543MP4, a quad-core GPU. The screen resolution is 1536 by 2048, and it's running iOS 5.1. It gives today's date and then shows that this device is not jailbroken. And then it gives the results down here. The FPU ALU test was 2.36 seconds. On the Apple iPad 2, it was 2.3 seconds, so it was quicker on the Apple iPad 2. The pi calculation on this device was 3.22 seconds. On the Apple iPad 2, it was 3.72 seconds, so the Apple iPad 3 was quicker in this test. The MD5 calc test was 2.38 seconds. On the Apple iPad 2, it was 2.47 seconds, so again quicker here on the Apple iPad 3. The screenshot test was 6.58 seconds on the Apple iPad 3, and it was 4.78 seconds on the Apple iPad 2, so quicker on the Apple iPad 2. The RAM test was 1.23 seconds on the Apple iPad 3, and 1.45 seconds on the iPad 2, so it was quicker here on the iPad 3. The disk test was 2.19 seconds on the Apple iPad 3 and 2.28 seconds on the iPad 2, so it was quicker on the iPad 3. The Quartz 2D test was 2.57 seconds on the iPad 3 and 2.62 seconds on the iPad 2. The resize image test was 7.66 seconds on the iPad 3 and 7.74 seconds on the iPad 2. The trans 3D test was 5.25 seconds on the iPad 3 and 5.1 seconds on the iPad 2, so it was quicker on the iPad 2. And the OpenGL-ES test was 60 frames per second on the iPad 3 and 60 frames per second on the iPad 2. So we have a tie there. And the total score for the iPad 3 was 33.45 seconds. The total score for the iPad 2 was 32.46 seconds. So the iPad 2 finished this test almost a full second faster than the iPad 3. But the iPad 2 was only quicker than the iPad 3 in 3 of the tests. The iPad 3 was faster than the iPad 2 in 6 of the tests. Okay, let's do the final benchmark in this video, which is Linpack. Okay, now there's a couple of options here, but we're going to stick with the standard problem sizes, and you can do the n equals 100 test or the n equals 1000 test. We're going to start with the n equals 100 test, and the test completed within seconds, actually 0.0026 seconds, so that's very fast, and the device scored 267.008 megaflops per second. The iPad 2 scored 60.792 megaflops per second. So the iPad 3 scored about 207 megaflops per second higher than the iPad 2. So I'm going to hit OK here, and we're going to try the n equals 1000 test. Okay, and the test was completed in less than a second, even though it did take a little bit longer this time. but it still was less than a second. The time was 0.746 seconds, and the device scored 895.687 megaflops per second. In comparison, the Apple iPad 2 scored 895.161 megaflops per second. So very close. In this test, the Apple iPad 3 scored about half a megaflop per second faster than did the iPad 2. So that pretty much does it for this video. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please post them down below. If you like what you see, please subscribe. And if you want to help out my channel, give me a thumbs up or favorite this video. If you're interested in any other videos I have on the Apple iPad 3, click on the link at the end of this video. So that's it for now. I'll see you guys next time.